Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, it's been a very busy 7 months, to say the least, and there's no end in sight as things gets heating up with the legislatures coming back to resume discussion about funding. So I expect things probably going to pick up a little more in the next few weeks. But again, it's great to be here. I'd like to talk a little bit about my presentation. It's going to have several topics. Let me see. Yeah. Okay, great. All right. Thank you, ladies. First, I'd like to, these are the topics I just want to run through right quick. First one is about workforce and succession planning. We dub it MDOT House. Talk about our 2020 standard specs for construction. Talk about the lettings we've had to date. Tons and squares, how the lettings relates to tons and squares of asphalt and concrete, and then a little bit about our bridge bonding program and our towards zero debt effort that's going on, not just at MDOT, but nationwide. One of the commissioners asked me to maybe present what is MDOT strategic plan moving forward. There's a copy of this strategic plan I put on in front of you, but I wanted to focus on what I mentioned is the MDOT House. How did this whole MDOT House came to be? Our workforce right now is made up of 40, 40, 20. 40% of our workforce is 49 years and older. Industry standard is about 18 to 20%. So we doubled that number. In a way, it's good, and also in a way, it's not great. Obviously, we have older employees that are staying longer, maybe because they enjoy working for MDOT, they enjoy what they're doing, and that's a good thing for us. We have a lot of very seasoned, experienced workforce. However, the downside of it is that if these 40% retires, what are we doing to make sure that we have knowledge transfer, that we have people ready in the pipeline to take over? And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And that also translates into some of our aggressive recruiting efforts that we have going on. I'll be more than happy to share that with you. So the house, the MDOT House, is made up of 5 pillars. The first one is leadership standard of excellence, role assessment model, talent review, knowledge management, that's the knowledge transfer piece of it, and then employee life cycle. I'm not going to go through each of the definitions of them. It's in your package. But part of how we ended up with this, as I mentioned, is the other 40% is between the age of 35 to 49, which is our seasoned group. And quite frankly, us in the executive branch, our fear now is that group are the ones that we really need to watch out for, because when we get this funding package, we're probably beginning to see a little bit of that. We expect that some of the consultants out of the private sector are going to want to recruit some of these to the private side, because obviously the salary issue, we can't match some of the things that they will probably offer. So we want to make sure that the top 40% is transferring the knowledge to the middle 40%. And then the bottom 20%, it's made up of others below the 35 years of age group. So again, this is what the MDOT house looks like, but those are the 5 pillars, and the foundation of those pillars to get to the roof starts with obviously the MDOT and our missions, visions, values. That's in your strategic plan that I gave you. And then what is the strategy? As I said, the strategy is really focused more on the knowledge transfer piece of it. Here is our leadership standard of excellence, one of the pillars. It kind of goes in a cycle. Obviously, as I mentioned, with the mission, vision, and values in mind, it talks about the visionary. What is the outcome we're trying to achieve? People first approach, professional excellence, and character and integrity. That's the next piece. And then you go to knowledge management system, which is really knowledge transfer, and it's about information and wisdom. The most seasoned employees sharing the information and their knowledge to the next group and transfer that knowledge further down. How do you achieve that? Person to person, and then creating a community of learning, and then processes of forwarding that information down. Role assessment talks about what are the critical roles that we need to look for. In the next leadership group, what are we looking for in that group? What is our expectations? What are the professional roles? How do we need to prepare them for that next level? Talent review process. This is something that's really new to MDOT, but a lot of industries, they do this, where the upper level sits down and kind of talks about the next lower level, that, okay, if I was to leave today, who among that group do you think it's ready to take over? The group sits around, have that conversation, throw some names around, talks about the positive aspects that each of the people that are in the next line brings to the department, and how they could be the next people stepping up. So it's a very involved one-to-one dialogue, and I myself, Tony, and Laura had a sit down and practice this, and I found it to be very, very helpful. It kind of gives you an idea of what others think about people in the next level. So I found it very good. Employee life cycle. How do we recruit, retain, and develop the next group? And then bring them on board and disembarking. It's almost like a cyclical from when they come in till hopefully when they leave because of retirement, not because of any other issue. So to talk a little bit about how this all materialized, or the side effect of that is that also we've adopted a very aggressive recruiting strategy. We have a lot of summer programs going on right now. We have almost probably over 400 youth development students working in the various regions. And what we do, these are high school students, and maybe mix them with some freshman college students to make sure we're exposing the next generation to what MDOT does, what the role of transportation engineer in our society. We don't expect all 400 of them to be civil engineers, but at least if we can capture a few of them, I think it's a good thing. And quite frankly, the ones that decide they don't want to be civil engineers, whenever they're driving through a work zone, they can have an idea of what it's about. And that's the objective of that. It's all federally funded, and I think we've gotten a lot of good results from that program. They do a lot of things. We also do a mentoring session on Fridays. They dress up. We have guest speakers come in and talk to them about, the value of hard work. Get up and go on a good living. Just about professionalism as a whole. And again, it's been a program that's been around a while, and I find it very, very, very useful program. The next group is internships. We have students coming out from college coming into MDOT. I'll say all over the state right now we probably have close to maybe about 30 students sprinkled all over the regions doing real engineering work. These are college students that are doing any STEM program, either civil, electrical, mechanical, industrial engineering, any engineering discipline. And quite frankly, the reason why we don't want to limit it to just civil engineering is that maybe there's opportunity to convert some of them that decide, hey, I think, doing the summer program, I like it. I may want to just change my major. Again, that's one of the other programs we have. We also have EDPs. These are students that just graduated, coming in, that have just been hired into MDOT. I went through that program when I first hired in 29 years ago. This is a program where we bring in students. The first 18 months to 2 years, we kind of rotate them around different areas of MDOT, give them exposure to the different areas, and then after the 18 months, we give them an opportunity, along with their mentor, to decide, okay, I think I want to be a design engineer. Not just hire students from college and throw them into a specific area, and then they end up not liking it, they leave. So I think this is one of the best programs out there in the country, because it really helped me decide what area of the profession I wanted to go into. And the last piece I will talk about is Transportation Diversity Recruitment Program. This is a program where we bring in about, I think this year we have about 18 students from all over HBCU schools. We bring them into MDOT from down south. And what we do is we put them up at area universities. I think right now we have University of Michigan, Wayne State, Grand Valley, Saginaw Valley, Michigan State, I believe, Western. We put them on campus, and we give them a job in different regions. They get to be part of our workforce for the summer. So when they go back, at least they have experience in what civil engineers do. Again, this is all part of our aggressive approach to recruiting young engineers into MDOT. We found it to be a good pipeline program, all these programs, quite frankly, and we're beginning to see some results, which is a good thing. So I mentioned our 2020 standard spec. This is where we are right now in the process. I can't see something that's blocking it, but I'll look up. We started this process June 2018. The way the spec development process works is the industry and MDOT gets together and decide, okay, there's time that we, maybe the technology in the industry is changing, a whole lot of things is coming into play. Let's sit down, look at our current standard specification and see if it's still applicable. So this is the process. We started this in June 2018. Right about now, we've done a lot of revision, and now they're doing what you call impasse. They put a panel together of MDOT and industry people to say, okay, well, this is what they want, this is what we want, we don't agree, and then kind of talk it out and try to find a happy medium. So we are going through that process right now. By November that goes from May to November of this year. So by October, we're hoping by February of 2020, we would have finished all the impasse issues and then take it to publication. By October 1 of 2020, that will be we'll be implementing our new standard specification at that time. Here is kind of give you an idea of what our lettings has been so far. In October, we had almost similar to just slightly over the 2015-2016 letting. In 2016-17, we had a higher letting. And I would say, without going through each step of it, what we've been hearing from the industry is that they would like to see us let a lot of big projects between October and December or January. Gives them a lot of time to prepare, to order their materials and get themselves ready to be able to, once the weather breaks, to start going. What we're finding out is that once you get to this time of the year, middle of the year, June, July, the bid starts coming in higher, because at that point they have a lot of work, and then it's just a matter of throwing out numbers out there, see if we're desperate enough to take it. I will give you a good example. We have Wayne County put a project out there. It was wrought with a lot of very aggressive schedule. We had a bid come in. One person bid it for 1,100% over. The engineer's estimate was 1.1 million, and the bids came in at 15 million. Obviously, we couldn't let a project like that. But the point is, we are listening to the industry and try to make sure that we let a lot of our projects early in the year. This is same graph, almost just to kind of show you the dollar amount we've let to date, about $1 billion by end of June of this year. As I said, if you look at June, July, August, the numbers go down, the number of bidders go down, because at that point, a lot of the contractors have enough capacity to keep them going for the rest of the year. And then you start seeing a spike right around the fall time. In tons and squares, in 2019, it was 2.7 million. Right now, it's showing 1.7 for 2020. Don't be alarmed by the huge difference in the numbers. It's because a lot of our CPM projects have not kicked in yet to kind of raise that number. I think by the time we're done, it'll almost be the same as the 2019 numbers. Talk a little bit about our local bridge bonding program. I don't know, commissioners, you've heard about this. We identified about 800 to about 1,100 local bridges, not MDOT bridges, that are really in critical need of repair. Different kinds, minor repair to major reconstruction. What we've done is work with the County Road Association and MML, Municipal League, to say, okay, you don't have the money to take care of these bridges, and the Federal Highway Administration is holding us responsible for making sure we don't have any failures out there. So we've had to close quite a few bridges, quite frankly. So what we did, and we decided to do, is we have about $1 billion need out there, but we just don't have the money. We're going to buy. We collected all these bridges. We're going to bond for them about $1 billion, and then work on them over time. We get about $45 million a year for local bridges. But the request that comes in sometimes tops $200 million. I mean, the math just doesn't work. So what we plan to do is use that $45 million to fund the bond over a period of time. So all you're doing is just front loading the projects. And we think this is a good way to go because we're having a lot of bridges in there that are really in bad need, that are in critical condition, and we would not, if without doing this, we would not get to them anytime soon. This is my poster child project, bridge. The governor visited this bridge about a month or so ago. Let me go back. I'm sorry. Let me go back. Oh, well, this is fine. This is Miller Road Bridge in Dearborn. Right there on that top corner is Fort Plant. That bridge carries a lot of the truck traffic going in and out of the truck line, raw materials and finished product out to the market. This bridge, the governor visited, has got over 500 temporary supports holding that bridge together. That means when you have that kind of support, that means the original support cannot hold the weight of that bridge anymore. And these are some of the conditions that we have out there. We are really playing with a lot of very dangerous situations. Now, I mean, with the temporary support, it's safe, but that you only kick the can down the road of 4 or 5 years. You're going to have to do something. This is a classic example of why we think doing a bridge bundling is very, very critical. This is a bridge that will cost about $50 to $60 million to reconstruct, but Wayne County doesn't have that money. So in the meantime, we're going out there spending $3, $4 million just still propping it up. This is another picture of the bridge. As I mentioned, the governor visited this as one of the poster child of why our infrastructure needs major overhaul. The Charlevoix Bridge, I can't even tell you how many times I've gotten an email from the chairman. The bridge is hung up again, it's stuck, and I will rush people out there to quickly do some stuff to get it operational. And this is another classic case of why we think this new bridge bundling program is going to be very critical. Without that kind of program, we would not be able to get to these kind of issues anytime soon. That's a project that is going on, and just talk a little bit about some of the major projects we have going on out in the regions. This is a project in the Superior region. It's about a $18 million project to rebuild that bridge over Escanaba River. I think I visited this bridge. I tell you, it's kind of scary looking at it, but this is, again, another example of where we are as far as our infrastructure goes. Talk a little bit about our Towards Zero Debt drive. We are partnering right now with the industry because I think last year we had several deaths in our construction zone. Perhaps some may argue it's because of our aggressive schedule. Some may say that, well, we're not doing enough for enforcement out there to make sure we protect workers. But I will tell you the one that really got to me was this year we had a kickoff for the Construction Zone Awareness Week. And I was in Traverse City, and this lady, Mrs. Snell, came up there and spoke to the group about how her husband got hit in the construction. He was a construction worker. It was a nighttime project. And everything on that construction site was done perfectly. As far as the work zone, maintenance of traffic devices, everything was done perfectly. But when you have a drunk driver at night gets into a construction zone, you can't design for stuff like that. So part of the effort now is that MDOT and the industry is getting together. We have committee put together. Tony is chairing that committee on our side, and then Mike Malloy on the contractor side. Mike Malloy is the president of CA Hall, to look at what more can we do to try to bring awareness to this issue. In the past, we used to have police enforcement in work zone where the federal grant would pay them to work overtime to monitor work zone. But with a lot of cuts in workforce, it makes it tough to get police enforcement out there. So the question is, what is the charge of this committee to see if there are other things we can do to bring awareness to work zone issue. So it's a national drive, not just state of Michigan, but I think hopefully we'll waiting for the recommendation from that committee, and we may be able to make some changes and improvement moving forward. So with that, I will turn over to the commissioners or anybody in the audience for questions.
Thank you, Director. Appreciate that. Questions?
Thank you, Director. I did have a question on the 2020 standard specifications for construction. Are there new materials, innovations in materials that we're seeing now that are going to have longer lives for surfacing materials or even structural materials for bridges?
Well, that is part of what our spec process is about. As the technology and material changes come into the industry, we try to look at ways to incorporate that in there without honing in on one specific innovation. We also have the universities, doing research, working with us to see, okay, perhaps the way you were doing this in the past is, things have changed, look at doing it differently. That's where you get to that impasse process where they have their ideas, we have ours, and then as you're talking it out, you try and find a happy medium.
It's a little early in the process to answer that.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Back on the workforce, if we could, a minute. And I appreciate you're giving us a kind of a quick update on the overall strategic approach and so on. I think as a commission we need to understand that, and I appreciate that. And then your workforce and succession planning, not an uncommon concern that you expressed in talking in the private sector with a lot of my colleagues in the business world with the same problem. Mm-hmm. Workforce is an issue. We're at such full employment levels, and there's so many opportunities for talent today. It's just hard to recruit and hard to retain. And succession is always a concern in any large organization. Any of us that have worked in large organizations know that. So I look at this and it looks like a real solid amount of thinking and solid kind of paradigm for MDOT to be working in. Is this, and this is just kind of my ignorance, if you will, do you employ outside consulting help on this kind of thing, or do you rely on your own HR folks? Does the state have kind of comprehensive workforce council within state government that helps you with these kind of things?
It's a combination of. I'll give the previous, my predecessor and the COO and Laura's, the last holdout of that group, a lot of credit. This was their foresight. This was their idea that, hey, they identified that we got this workforce problem early, and we hired a consultant to help us put this together, working in conjunction with our HR folks and also our professional development folks to say, okay, projecting forward 5, 10, 15 years, what is the department going to look like? How are you making sure that all this talent pool leaving, that you're replacing them not just with anybody, but with the right people in the right place. And this is the end product of that work. It took about close to maybe, I would say, about a year and a half, roughly. And what we've been doing now is cascading this down to the rest of the employees and trying to make sure that, I will give you a good example, the role assessment model, we were going to, when I was in Metro, we were going to hire somebody. I said, well, why don't we put it out there externally and see if we can get more people to apply, and we were able to find somebody on the outside that fits the exact mode of what we're looking for. So it's not just hiring people, it's also making sure you're hiring the right people for the right position.
It's commendable to have that kind of discipline internally on how to approach the whole workforce challenge that all aspects of the economy are facing right now. So yeah, that's commendable. I don't have high school age kids, but I certainly hope the high school counseling departments all over Michigan are helping our youngsters understand that there's so many unbelievable opportunities out there. Yeah. And I applaud your youth programs, and some of those kids are going to kind of grab a hold and love this line of work. And there's so many grand opportunities. I'd like to be a high school kid today and look ahead and see so many possibilities. So I'm glad you're exposing kids like that.
Thank you. Again, the end product of this is also us taking an aggressive recruiting approach, going outside the state to recruit talents wherever we can find them, because we are competing. It's a global competition now.
Yeah,
to stay competitive. So, thank you.
Other questions or comments?
I have one. Thank you for the report, Director. I got a question on the local agency bridge bundling initiative. The 1,100 local bridges that you're looking at doing are not the ones that are listed in our 5-year plan, correct?
No, these are local bridges.
Okay.
These are not MDOT bridges. That's
Okay.
correct.
So the 400 that are in serious or critical condition and the 44 that are closed and the 244 in bridge condition, are those the ones that are in that 1,100 that are going to be getting the bond issue?
I believe so. Those are all local bridges, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then when will that go out?
We've selected 2 consultants. I don't think it's been announced yet, to be more like project managers for us and help us manage how we put it out there. We're still working internally on the strategy of how do we put such a huge amount of projects out there, and so we want to be very strategic to make sure that, because it's not just Lower Peninsula, it's all over the state. So we have to make sure we have it set up the right way. We're working on that
Is
right now.
the goal then, Director, to get those fixed by 2020, or what's the timeline?
No, to get the package out by 2020, but it's going to take some time. We're going to first try to start with the most critical ones, the ones that are closed right now that has economic impact on the area. Also, then start working our way through the rest of it. It's going to be a combination of.
Okay, so it's going to be a few years.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. Excellent report, Director.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate your taking the time to kind of catch us up to speed. That's
Thank
great.
you. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go into our regular meeting then. First item would be the minutes from the April 18th commission meeting. They were in your packet.
Move their approval, Mr. Chair.
It's been moved and supported. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passed. Next on the agenda is our Office of Commission Audits. Jack Cotter will give us an update.
Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning, everyone. My office is essentially a CPA firm that has specialized objectives. In past commission meetings, I have discussed that we perform compliance reviews of counties and cities, and our efforts I've also described our efforts to perform non-audit services on behalf of the department, such as contract reviews, proposal reviews, pre-qualification reviews, et cetera. When people think of a CPA firm, they think of audits or taxes, and although many of my staff are familiar with tax preparation services, OCA performs no tax work, so that leaves audits to talk about here. Audits are generally thought of in a generic sense. Auditors are given some financial information, and they look it over and make sure it looks okay. I could speak quite a while on the various types of audits, but I promise you I won't. At OCA, we have strategically chosen to avoid audits. They cost much time and resources, and from a utility standpoint, provide a little more than we provide when we perform risk assessments and notify management of risk observations. To do an audit, numerous standards are required to be followed. Among other state DOT audit shops, my staff are believed to be national leaders in financial auditing standards. In fact, last week we presented in California on the topic and received the gratitude of numerous other states for providing our expertise and guidance. A number of CPA firms around the United States have been found in non-compliance with auditing standards, and last week we helped those other states put such non-compliance in context so they can motivate their CPA firms to follow the professional standards. But I'm digressing a little bit here. Getting back to risk assessments, they're not subject to specific standards. That allows my office to more timely generate underlying risk assessments and observations. As the department can attest, even risk assessments and observations can take what seems to be too long. The length of time is a direct relationship to make sure that my office gets it right, and it also relates to the cooperation we receive along the way. So, I speak in terms of audits being a generic term. Another generic term used interchangeably with audits sometimes is the word investigations. Investigations are not audits. There are no detailed standards for investigations. There are, however, expectations that due professional care will occur and that due process will allow those persons or entities investigated an opportunity to ensure that the facts in the report are accurate. An investigation entails interviews, reviews of emails, policies, procedures, processes, and reviews of related documentation. Depending on the objective of the investigation, auditors might make statements of fact or draw conclusions. Investigation reports might state that auditors have evidence that a person did, as a matter of fact, a certain thing. Auditors might not connect the dots for the reader because the connection of dots requires omniscience, or the ability to read the minds of the persons involved. Mind reading can be easier if the targets of the investigation sent emails clearly stating their bad intent. My office does not have a specific power to review such emails unless provided by the director. And even then, the director can only provide access to departmental emails. The Office of the Auditor General, where I worked for 25 years, they have subpoena power over all of state government, but they have no subpoena power over the private sector. So that leaves law enforcement agencies to have the subpoena power over public and private sector entities. So sometimes we connect the dots because, as a matter of fact, the dots clearly or obviously connect. An investigation could allow my office to conclude that based on the facts that the department did something that, for example, was illegal or unsafe or ill-advised. So recently, the commission asked me to investigate the events surrounding a report that the department paid for and another report that it contracted for. This discussion has been intended to help management expectations regarding where the results of our investigation might lead us. And as the results of the investigation cannot be known until evidence is acquired and reviewed, we won't know if we were able to connect the dots until the end of the process. Thank you for listening, and are there any questions?
Questions from any of the commissioners? I think the Office of Commission Audits and you, Jack, provide us with, the ability to be able to look the taxpayers in the eye and say we've got yet another level of assurance that tax dollars are being used properly and wisely. and we appreciate your office's support in that process as commissioners. I think sometimes the general public really doesn't understand what the State Transportation Commission, what our responsibilities or our authorities are, and they are limited. But to be able to say that there's an Office of Commission Audit and that we feel like there's other eyes and ears there on the process, it just helps us be able to look people in the eye and say, things are operated very well in MDOT, which I think we all agree they are. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go into the remainder of the agenda. Exhibit A and A1, presented by Patrick.
Good morning, Commissioners.
morning.
Exhibit A contains 42 contracts comprised of local agency participation, passenger transportation, and rail contracts. Do you have any questions?
Commissioner Harlow.
I did have a couple of questions, and I want to admit that the first is really born of my own ignorance, because I haven't followed as closely as I might the Regional Transit Authority of Southeast Michigan. I'm referring to contract number 19 in our packet. Could I just get a brief update on where the RTA is? Does it yet have an approved plan? And if so, how does this fit within that plan?
I think, Commissioner, I'm going to have to get back with you on that question. I don't have the information in front of me to answer that question. Do you, Tim?
Commissioner, the RTA has just released their updated plan. I don't believe it's been adopted or anything at this point, but they're working through that process. The last year or two, they've been having the plan updated. Draft just released every draft.
Okay, so, but we're confident, and I can be confident in voting that this $350,000 fits within that plan, as we've vetted that. And what is the RTA doing now? What is its role vis-a-vis the two transit providers in Southeast Michigan?
Commissioner, if I may, Gene Rustman of our passenger transportation has been working very closely with the RTA. They're in the process of exploring doing some pilot programs at the same time that they're looking at the timing of getting removed. And so they've been meeting with the leadership of and the board on what are the next steps as a result of the failure of their last meeting. What are some of the things that they can be doing? And so they're trying to partner with areas or with the transit agencies within those areas to pilot some of the programs. And they're looking at what will be the future of the RTA of bringing these groups together. The law is still in existence, so they have a responsibility to distribute the funding that we provide to them, and we work with those agencies to carry out their missions.
That's helpful, thank you. My question is not meant at all to be critical, but because I just think that, and I thought at the time that the RTA is such a good idea to bring some consistency, cooperation between the transit providers in Southeast Michigan. But I've been concerned about how it was, after the failure of the millage, what is it actually doing right now? And I'm hearing it does have a role, and monies that we're giving it are passing through and being used to, in this case, for safety technology for the two major systems. Okay.
And so they're still striving to meet the objectives of the and provide regional transit and mobility options for the citizens in those areas.
The second question, if I may, Mr. Chair, is, has to do with item number 32 on CMAQ funding, and it was, the question is, do we see any diminishment of the federal commitment to congestion mitigation air quality, this to CMAQ, or are they still strongly supportive of that?
I'm not aware of any discussions in the reauthorization discussions to reduce the CMAQ program or
Yeah,
funding.
good. It's a good program. It's a good program. More important all the time, it seems to me. And but I was just concerned that maybe the federal commitment would be weakened under this administration. Not so?
Again, Commissioner, I don't believe so. And one of the things that we've done within the department is to look at the CMAQ funding and how do we use that with other operational improvements so that we can get better road projects as a result and improve mobility. But I'm not aware of any significant decreases in that program.
Any other questions on
I have a
Yes,
question.
Helen?
Okay. When we have, for example, on number 15 and 16, when we have to do an authorization or to extend the project for 2 years due to procurement staff vacancies, does that, other than messing us up on timing, does that cost us more money because of that?
No, I do not believe so, and in fact, the Section 5307 funding is an annual program, so the future fiscal year's funding is still available to continue those programs.
Okay.
So it's not increasing the cost of those programs.
Okay.
Other questions? Entertain a motion on Exhibit A.
Move approval.
And support. It's been moved and supported. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Exhibit A1.
Exhibit A1 contains 7 contracts that will be let on August 9th. All are over $500,000 and require commission approval. Do you have any questions?
Questions or comments on Exhibit A1? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Move approval.
It's been moved and supported that Exhibit A1 be approved. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes. Exhibit A3, while you're up there, Ken.
Exhibit A3 contains 1 contract which is less than $500,000, which has only 1 bidder. Do you have any questions?
It's a pretty significant overage, right? That's the one, yeah, 31% overestimate. And with the single bidder, how does this, what do we do in a case like that? Is that something that Office of Commission Audit looks at?
A bid that's over the engineer's estimate by more than 10% would require a justification from our engineers, or they could choose to reject the submission.
And we're not rejecting, there's no recommendation to reject this one.
No. Right.
Engineers and their boards and their councils that do the risk review to determine whether or not they want to move forward and justify or not. In most cases, the dollar amounts are capped, but they're getting federal funds and whatnot. So a lot of times it's their ability to take on that additional piece.
That's not require commission approval, so that's great. While you're up there, though, Patrick, why don't you, could you address anything on the item 4 on the agenda, director's agenda, state administrative board agendas?
Sure. The June 20th, 2019 Director's Agenda contains 2 contracts. These are contracts that do not require state ad board or state transportation approval. Do you have any questions?
I see none.
And then regarding the June 25th, 2019 state ad board contains 30 contracts. Do you have any questions on those contracts?
Any questions on those items? Great, just saved you getting up and down one more time. So,
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Exhibit B, Jason?
Good morning, Commission. I'm going to report on the specifics for Exhibit B. MDOT projects for April, May, and June. 58 projects totaling approximately $290 million were finalized. 2 of those projects were more than 10% over the original contract amount, and 36 projects came in under their original contract value. The final contract costs for those months were respectively 1.33 under, 4.98 under, and 3.33 over when compared to their original contract amount. Fiscal year to date, we're right around 0. We're averaging 0.02% over our original contract amount. And then for local agency projects for April, May, and June, they had 80 projects totaling approximately $69 million being finalized. 6 of those projects were more than 10% over the original contract amount, and 48 projects came in under their original contract value. And obviously, those projects that were over 10% will be presented at a future commission meeting as well. So with that, entertain any questions on Exhibit B?
Any questions of Jason? Pretty good track record. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. Thank you, Jason. Appreciate that. Okay, that's the business of the commission. So then we'll go on. Well, I guess we do have the 5-year transportation program later to approve, but let's go on into the presentations. And Joanna Johnson from the Transportation Asset Management Council.
There we go. Can you hear me? Can you see me? Is probably more the answer than your question. All right. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present today. Really appreciate the opportunity on behalf of the Transportation Asset Management Council to be here today. You should have a few handouts, and I just wanted to mention those. First of all, you should have a brochure probably within your packets describing the Transportation Asset Management Council. And I do want to recognize 2 of our current members who are in the audience, Todd White as well as Brad Weabrick. And also a past Transportation Asset Management Council representative, Dave Wazinski, and also Dave Jeanette there in the back, who is a transportation planner and helps support the council. So appreciate all of those efforts. So you have information there, as well as our annual report. Typically, when we've been here in the past, we've gone over the annual report, I won't say page by page, but high level in terms of the condition of our roads and bridges throughout the state. Today, you can certainly probably have the opportunity to review this if you haven't already. Unfortunately, as many of us know, the condition of our roads and bridges throughout the state continues to decline. We have an increase in both core federal aid roadways in the state as well as our bridges. And you can see those graphics throughout this. But just focusing a little bit on the Transportation Asset Management Council and what we have been doing through the course of the year. First and foremost, last year, key critical components for us, Public Act 323 passed, and that created the Michigan Infrastructure Council. Public Act 324 passed, and that created the Water Asset Management Council. And we also had some revisions to the Transportation Asset Management Council future with Public Act 325. One of the things that we recognized early on as a council was to update our mission. And as you see on the presentation, Primarily in number one, we added the Michigan Infrastructure Council to those folks that we advise as it relates to the condition of our roads and bridges and other infrastructure assets throughout the state. And another key component within the legislation is for us to coordinate with our partners at the newly formed Water Asset Management Council. And quite frankly, these bills together created an opportunity for all of us to look at asset management for all of our infrastructure assets and to work together. So we're proud to be working with both the MIC, the Michigan Infrastructure Council, and the Water Asset Management Council going forward. In 2018, I can say that we certainly had a lot of studies that we put together. I'm very proud of the Culvert mapping pilot. You should have information at your stations for that as well, and I'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later. We also analyzed a lot of the data that we have coming in from agencies, our 617 transportation agencies, on projects, the cost of those projects, and looking at level of investment. And we also took a look at the various treatments that are happening throughout the state, whether it be chip seal and fog seal, hot mix asphalt overlays, really taking a look at what is the pavement treatment life and the remaining service life for those types of treatments. So some great studies, you can find those on our website if you're interested in getting into great detail on those, but proud to showcase those. And the key to all of this is helping all of our transportation agencies work together in terms of knowledge and information. We want these to be useful tools that we can work on back in our various agencies and utilize in our day-to-day decision making. I wanted to talk about asset management plans. This is an important element for the council, and certainly with the new legislation and the updates to Public Act 325. But we always do a survey of our agencies, and I thought it's important to share that we are changing the culture across the state in terms of asset management, to know what we have, what condition it's in, and using that to make good data-driven decisions. So as you look at the implementation of asset management, we have 123 agencies across the state that own 92% of the public road system. Of those, 95% use an asset management system, 97% use PASER, the Pavement Asset Surface and Evaluation Rating, to plan treatments, 98% use preventive maintenance treatments, and 85% collect beyond pavement. In other words, we're collecting information on other infrastructure assets, not just our pavements. So just proud to say that we're working very, very hard to build asset management into the culture of all of our agencies, and again, have good, useful tools out in the field. So who are our top 123? Remember, these folks own 92% of the system and are responsible for 100 or more certified miles. And this was actually, in terms of the responsible for 100 or more certified miles, was defined in Public Act 325. So all 83 county road departments and commissions make that up, as well as 39 of the Michigan's largest cities. And you can see those up on the screen as well. So with that, one of the things within Public Act 325 is that we had to come up with a schedule of when asset management plans were going to be due for those top 123 agencies. And we spent a lot of time communicating with our partners from a council's perspective, because our key component is we want to set all of these agencies up to succeed. So we had a variety of different communications, and for me, I like the graphic. The picture says 1,000 words. Basically, we have agencies that the first asset management plan officially with Public Act 325 is due in 2020. Those on this particular map are shared or in pink, 2021 in blue, and 2022 in green. And by giving this notice to these agencies early on, we can help set them up for success in asset management planning. Another key component of Public Act 325 for the council was that the Act created key components of an asset management plan. Well, I'm proud to say that the Transportation Asset Management Council had plan templates developed that dated back to 2011 for roads as well as for bridges. But there were some key components that our current plan did not have in them that need to be updated. And we have to have this template available for local agencies, according to Public Act 325, by October of this year. So we have to update, this is an area that we're spending time this year, is updating our template for asset management plans. We have to update it to create a provision within the template to help our agencies for the risk of failure analysis, as well as a coordination clause. What does that look like? What are you doing to coordinate with those other infrastructure assets and other partners? And those are the two key components that we're working on to make sure that we have a template, a new template, revised template available for October of this year. So we're spending a lot of time on this as a council just to make sure that we're providing a great tool for all of the various agencies, specifically the top 123. I wanted to make mention of the Culvert mapping pilot. We were proud to be recognized along with our partners at Michigan Technological University, or MTU. In the American Public Works Association, the Michigan chapter did recognize that particular pilot program that we had in 2018 as the Public Works Project of the Year. So it was a great project to be part of. Again, you have that information, a snapshot, not in great detail, of the pilot program. So why was the pilot program so important? One of the key components, as noted, as a potential other infrastructure asset to inventory and collect condition data on, was included in Public Act 325. So we had to take a beginning step, if you will, in trying to assess how do you rate condition data on culverts, how many are there in the state, and what does that look like? So we had a culvert pilot, mapping pilot program that we started in 2018, and we worked with our bridge committee, and I know Brad was part of that, in terms of some guidance for the pilot. How do you even begin to do this? Basically, what we were doing, what we did for roads in terms of Pazer, we're trying to do that for culverts. So you have the executive summary report. And I so appreciate the 50 local agencies who participated on this in short notice. They were actually collecting data in days like today with high vegetation, sometimes very difficult to find culverts with a lot of vegetation around in the field. But I'll just give you a couple key highlights from the estimated statewide local agency inventory that I thought was interesting as we did all this. There are an estimated number of local agency culverts totaling 196,000 across the state. The estimated length of local agency culverts is 7.3 million to 9.2 million. That's enough culvert pipe to build a single straight culvert from Houghton, Michigan, all the way to the tip of Key West, Florida. We have a lot of culverts out there, but this pilot was very successful, and I'm proud to say there are so many folks who are interested in continuing this because they are a key component of our infrastructure, especially if you look at some of the flooding and the related issues we've had over the past few years. So they are of criticality, but there's a lot of them and it takes a lot of work. So presently, our bridge committee is taking the pilot information program, and we are now creating, like I mentioned earlier, the Pazer, if you will, for culverts, in assessing what is the condition of culverts and how do you assess that, and rolling that out. The transportation asset management plan that these agencies have to produce have to have a provision in there for culverts as well. So great program, a lot of work. And I'm going to end with thanking Commissioner Hartwell on a beautiful January day. He came out to Kalamazoo and helped present the transportation asset management planning for local officials. And this is a program that the Transportation Asset Management Council has done for many years, and really helping to begin and build that culture of asset management through the leaderships at local agencies. So great to have him there and appreciate his time and energy. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions for Joanna? Thank you. I remember when I first came on the commission many years ago, I was impressed with this effort, and I just every year it just gets better and better and better, and it's a real bright spot in government overall in the state of Michigan, state, local, It's just a phenomenal partnership, and you guys approach things in such a way that, again, the taxpayers need to be more aware of just how responsible you're being with the systems that you're looking at. No, thank you.
Chairman, I haven't been on as long as you have, but in just 4 years ago, when I heard the first report on the council, I don't think I'm wrong about this, but among those 123 agencies, you could count on two hands those who had implemented asset management plans with fingers left over. So I think that the council has really ramped up and is doing a phenomenal job when you see that, what was it, 92% of the top 123 now have plans in place? That's amazing. Good work.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
5-year transportation program. All received that in your packet, so, yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, my name is Lina Chapman. I'm the 5-year program specialist in the Bureau of Transportation Planning. So I'm here to present to you today the 2020 to 2024 5-year transportation program. And I have some help with me here today. We have Nikki Johnson from Office of Rail, Lisa Luban from Passenger Transportation, and Alyssa Van Hook from Office of Aviation. So they're going to help me with their portions of the presentation. So for each mode, we're going to provide you with a brief overview of the revenues and investment strategies that are described in the document in more detail. And also just something to keep in mind, in light of current budget negotiations, some of these amounts are subject to change over the course of the years that this document covers.
Hopefully all up.
Yes, all up would be wonderful. Okay, so the MDOT 5-year program, all transportation modes, is a total of $12.3 billion over the course of this time frame. We have $9.4 billion invested in the highway capital program, $2.3 in the public transportation program, and then $701.3 million in the aviation program. So the development of this highway program is based on some assumptions that we have about future funding and annual growth rates. So for the state, we expect $4.5 billion in state funding to be available for the highway program over this time period, which is after debt service. And some of this amount includes the $59 million in the income tax revenue that was appropriated to the state trunk line fund starting in fiscal year 19, which increases to about $127 million in fiscal year 20, and then $235 million in fiscal year 2021, and each year thereafter. And then on the federal side, $4.4 billion is expected to be available for this time frame. We expect about 2% a year in a growth rate for that fund. And then, so the total brings us to $8.9 billion for the program, for total funding available. And I'll kind of get to a little bit of why there's a difference in that number versus the investment amount total in just a second. So here's the fiscal year 20 to 24 highway program all by itself. MDOT continues to focus on the preservation and maintenance of a safe transportation system for citizens and visitors alike. And in order to do that, we continue to utilize all anticipated state and federal revenue in the program. So annually, MDOT develops an investment strategy in order to accomplish this goal. So it allows us to allocate targeted investment amounts to the various program categories that you see here, and based on strategies and goals and statewide priorities that we have established in things like the long-range plan and other documents that we use to guide our investments. So this investment strategy is really a tool that we use to constrain the statewide program against all available revenue. So from the $9.4 billion in the 5-year investment, just over $8 billion is going to be dedicated to repairing and rebuilding Michigan's roads. This total reflects investments including pre-construction and construction activities. So $953 million of that 9.4 is dedicated to safety and system operations, which includes TSMO activities, the Transportation System Maintenance and Operations. $419 million is dedicated to what we kind of categorize here as other investments, which includes everything from transportation alternatives program, roadside facilities, workforce development that was mentioned earlier, and other state-funded programs. And we've also included the US 31 build grant here as well. And so it should be noted here, there's an asterisk that's on the bottom there. This total $9.4 billion program includes an amount of about $566 million that represents the construction on the I-75 modernization project in Oakland County. That money was actually obligated in fiscal year 18, but since the work is continuing on through the course of this program, we include it here to represent the total investment on the system. Okay, so this is the highway program investment pie chart or bar chart that you'll see in the document. It breaks down each fiscal year and separated between routine maintenance and preservation activities. And so at the annual average investment of about $1.8 billion, this represents about 24,000 jobs supported through this investment. That's based on standard models that we use to evaluate investment outcomes, and that's kind of like a build or no build scenario. So that's where the 24,000 jobs comes from. So it's really a very essential part of our economy, and we try our best to make these investments in the best way possible. So I just wanted to highlight a couple of projects that you also have more details about in the document. The first one up there in the top left corner is a rendering of the Gordie Howe International Bridge. The one right below it is the Lafayette Bascule Bridge that's going over the Saginaw River in Bay City. So that's going to be begin construction in 2020, and they do expect a full detour on that route for about 24 months while the existing bridge is demolished and the new bridge is put into place. Oh, I forgot to mention, Gordie Howe is expected to take about 6 years to complete before being open to traffic. Back up a little bit. So US 31 freeway project in Berrien County, that's the one up there, kind of like, it's got the colorful lines on it there. That is a project that's been in development for more than 40 years, and it recently received the a $20 million build grant that I mentioned just a minute ago. So they're going to finish the connection from US 31 to the Indiana Toll Road at I-94. And MDOT's providing the state match of that $19 million. So the one right beneath that is a 10-foot wide shared use pathway along Waverly Road in Lansing. And it's included here because it's a complex interagency project that addresses safety challenges on the system there for several different user groups, including pedestrians, bicyclists, and drivers. You can see the goat path running through there to show that there really is a need here. And this coordination involves a number of entities, including Lansing Township, Delta Township, Ingham County Road Department, Eaton County Road Commission, and MDOT. So include it here to kind of feature that interagency collaboration. The photo on the above right is the I-196 flip interchange project in Grand Rapids. You probably see some work out there right now, but that's continuing throughout the course of the program. And then the one there on the bottom is a small part of the I-94 freeway modernization project. So in 2020 and 2021, the interchanges at M60 and Elm Road are going to be constructed, and that's talked about in the document as well. So beyond the road and bridge projects, there's also quite a number of other things that we talk about in the 5-year program, including the new North American Auto Show Innovation Challenge and the implementation of different innovative projects in alignment with TISMO and ITS strategic plans, such as the I-96 Flex Route project, I-94 Variable Advisory Speed Limits, and then plus the aviation and passenger transportation projects that are going to be talked about in just a little bit. So if we focus now on this coming fiscal year for the highway program, we have about $1.8 billion planned in investment. And that helps us to ensure that the network is preserved with the funding that we do have available. So it's estimated that about $838 million in federal funding will be available for the program in 2020. And state revenue, on the state side, it's about $815 million after allowing for debt service. So we have $686 million for the repair and rebuild roads program, $186 million for trunk line modernization, $209 million on the bridge program, routine maintenance at $406 million, and safety and system operations at $194, and the other category, $121 million this coming year. And now I'm going to kind of switch gears a little bit and begin the introduction to the multimodal program. So this slide is also, this is a clip from the document. So we have $701.3 million, as I mentioned, for the 5-year total for the program, but of that, $140.3 million for fiscal year 20 alone for aviation, and then on the public transportation program side, $457.1 million for fiscal year 20 at a total of $2.3 billion for the course of the 5-year program. So now I'm going to hand it over to Lisa Luban. She's going to talk about the public transportation program revenue.
Good morning. Public transportation includes local and intercity bus, which are both administered by the Office of Passenger Transportation, as well as passenger and freight rail, marine, and port programs, which are administered by the Office of Rail. For our state revenues, the CTF continues to be the primary source of funding for public transportation program, although there are some limited MTF dollars used for some of the rail programs. CTF continues to mainly be funded from a portion of the MTF as well as some auto-related sales tax. At the time this plan was drafted, we anticipated CTF revenue to increase slightly for each year of this 5-year program. Federal revenues come from mode-specific programs, FTA for transit and intercity bus, FRA and FHWA for rail and ports. The estimated total of this 5-year program is approximately $2.3 billion. In many ways, development of a 5-year program for the Office of Passenger Transportation, bus and marine programs is not feasible. The programs cover local transit, which is bus, marine, and intercity bus, and the vast majority of the projects are selected at the local level and not by MDOT. Decisions on how to make use of any discretionary funds that we may receive to support each of these modes is made on an annual basis in reactions to the most pressing needs at the time. Our local transit investments will continue to focus on preservation of existing services throughout the state via operating assistance to local transit, intercity bus, and public marine service providers. We will preserve and maintain the existing infrastructure, which is largely locally owned via state investment and match to federal dollars for routine vehicle replacement. Support of capital strategies through the local areas that are established by our local transit agencies through matching capital grants for infrastructure replacement and repairs, and in very limited situations, if funding is available, some minor capacity expansion. For performance measures at the local transit levels, we'll look at the levels of service. We'll look at the condition of the fleet, which is mostly impacted by decisions at the local level. And we'll also look at rural access to the intercity bus for connectivity to the national network. We have more control as MDOT over the intercity bus through our funding of the routes. As you can see on the pie chart here, local bus operating continues to be our largest appropriation and the biggest distribution of the CTF, while marine passenger services is our smallest. A total of $346.5 million is planned for this fiscal year, and as we previously mentioned, we're going to focus on preserving our local bus services throughout the state, continuing to provide operating assistance to marine passenger systems, intercity bus services, and the other services shown here. Looking towards the future, we've got several collaborative projects that are seeking out new and innovative ways to improve the mobility options available to people. First, we have the $8 million Michigan Mobility Challenge, which is a partnership between MDOT, MEDC, Planet M, MDHHS, and the Michigan Veterans Affairs Agency. There are multiple innovative projects of varying sizes that are looking to solve mobility gaps for seniors, persons with disabilities, and veterans in urban, rural, and suburban communities throughout the state of Michigan. The NAIAS, North American International Auto Show 2020, has called upon the industry innovators to propose new and dynamic technology deployments that embody how automated and connected vehicle technology can transform how we live, work, and play. This challenge will spotlight what Michigan offers for the future of automated technology and is another partnership between MDOT and MEDC's Planet M. Third time's the charm. MDOT again partnered with MEDC's Planet M on the Automated Bus Consortium. In this innovative project, we will use transit agencies throughout Michigan and across the country to evaluate the possibility of safely accelerating the deployment of automated transit technologies. And Nikki is going to tell you about the Office of Rail.
So the rail and port programs are the smallest portion of the overall MDOT program, but I hope you guys were really impressed by the train we
I
had
thought your
staged.
timing was excellent.
Yeah. Or CSX was just running a little early. It would have been really impressive
Yeah.
had they have been with our slides. So our rail and port program, as Lisa mentioned, is primarily funded with CTF funds. The only exception is really for our grade crossing programs that are supported by state MTF dollars and federal aid dollars. When it comes to the grade crossing programs, the efforts that are made on the local roadway system are reflected in the rail and port program, and then about almost $5 million that's invested on the state trunk line system is reflected in the highway program. So how we invest those dollars kind of breaks down on this pie chart. This is the FY 2020 estimation of how we'll be investing those dollars. It includes about $10 million in spending authority, so we really anticipate being able to invest about $100 million. Of course, if you take that, our approach to our 5-year program, the pie would grow, but the breakdown would stay about the same. So here you can see the grade crossing programs in green. So that's what I mentioned is our MTF, supported by our MTF and federal aid dollars. The rest of it is supported by CTF. If you look at the orange and blue, that really is our efforts on the intercity passenger rail services. So as you can see, a bulk of our efforts goes to those items. So when it comes to passenger rail, how it really breaks down is that we're planning to invest about $20 million next year in the operating support for the 3 intercity passenger rail services that serve 22 station communities. And then we're planning to invest about $45 million on the MDOT-owned Michigan line that runs between Kalamazoo and Dearborn. Those investments we primarily focused on increasing speeds to meet the obligations associated with the federal grants that we previously received for that corridor. Our other investments will be for grade crossings and for the freight rail system. When it comes to grade crossings, we'll be investing about $13.5 million next year on improving safety through warning device enhancements, crossing surface improvements, and crossing closures. We'll also have a special effort trying to eliminate crossings by realigning track. Then when it comes to the freight system, we will be making some capital improvements on our state-owned system that only supports freight at this time. And then we'll also be making some investments through our Freight Economic Development Program that's really designed to help rail customers connect to the system, and hoping to have another call through our MERLAP program, which helps railroad companies with investments on the mainline rail corridor. And with that, I'm going to turn things over so you can hear more about the rest of our overall program.
Hi, I'm Melissa Van Hook from the Office of Aeronautics, and I'm going to talk about the aviation portion of the program. As you can see see from the chart, the blue portion is our primary airport programs. So it's $106 million being invested in that area. These are the commercial airports that have over 10,000 enplanements a year, which are revenue passenger boarding plans. There are currently 15 airports in Michigan that are eligible for this program. The orange portion is our state block grant program. These are 74 non-primary airports that are part of the National Plan of Integrated Airport Systems, or the NIPIAS airports. The investments in these two programs are focused on reducing system and facility deficiencies by utilizing an asset management approach. The high priorities continue to be the preservation of critical infrastructure, the navigational age, and the protection of airspace. There's also a very small section you can see there is our air service program. That's $250,000 a year that is allocated in a statewide effort to attract and retain air service. For the revenue for the aviation program, the state aeronautics funds receives revenue from a portion of the tax on aviation fuel. There's also an airport parking tax that goes to pay debt service, but the remaining portion that is not used for debt service does come into the capital improvement fund. It is not known at this time if there is sufficient state aeronautic funds to fully match the federal funding, especially given the current potential for discretionary and supplemental funds. The federal funding is the Federal Aviation Administration Reauthorization Act of 2018. This reauthorized FAA through the end of fiscal year 23, with funding levels similar to previous years. The Airport Improvement Program also received $1 billion in supplemental funding for fiscal year 18 to 20. These supplemental funds are FAA discretionary funds, and the airports compete for them on a national level. The federal funding typically covers 90% of the project cost, with the remaining 10% being split by state and local, which leaves the airport sponsors responsible for the local match, which is typically 5%. Some of the projects, just to highlight, that are currently using these funds are the Alpena Regional Terminal Replacement Project and the Gogebic Iron County Airport Project. And there's more information in the plan on these projects. And just to highlight, while the commercial airline service, like passenger and cargo, are often the most recognizable facet of aviation, the general aviation accounts for 97% of the nation's airports. And these airports support a variety of aviation activities, including police, firefighting, search and rescue, emergency medical flights, agricultural, flight instructions for future pilots, on-demand charter services, tourism, and recreation. Aviation accounts for over 183,000 jobs in the state of Michigan. These are air-reliant jobs. It also contributes $22 million annually to Michigan's economy. And the Michigan airports serve over 39 million passengers each year, and they move more than 6 million pounds of air cargo. I'm going to hand it back to Lena to wrap up. Thank you.
Okay, so I want to draw your attention real quick to the project list in the document. There has been one late addition to the list, and that's a project in Kent County. It's on US 131. It's a bridge replacement project over 100th Street. That is not in the document that you have in front of you right now, but when it gets posted to the website for public comment, that will be in there, and it will also be on the interactive map that goes along with it. Just wanted to bring that to your attention.
That's the bridge that routinely gets hit, right?
Yeah,
that
yeah.
one.
There's quite a few hits on that bridge, and so there's been some special effort to make sure that project gets done. So just wanted to make sure you knew that was happening. Okay, so today we're here to present this document to you and also request your approval to post it to the public website for our 30-day public comment period. We're targeting that from August 1st through August 30th, and so we do a press release with that, and we share it in all of our social media mechanisms that we have in order to get the word out. Hopefully we'll get even more response back this year than we did last year. It kind of keeps growing, so that's a really good thing to see. So with that, Just to let you know, once the public comment period is over, we come back again to talk to you in October to do a recap of those public comments and to ensure you that anything that we needed to address in the document has done so, we have done so. And then once that's done, it's due to the state legislature in 2020. We always submit it before then. So I'm requesting your consideration for approval to post to the website.
Okay. Any questions, Flynn, before we? Yes, Joe.
I do. I think it's not a question for Lina as much as it is a question for the director. Excuse me. Given the urgency of the funding question, I'd be curious about the conversations or the thought process that went into presenting that in the document. You right up front in your director's letter say as funding levels continue to lag behind overall needs, et cetera. So it's right up there up front. Then I get to page 42 before I see the chart that shows the deterioration of and the anticipated deterioration of the roads. And so I'm wondering how do you juggle the need to be positive and moving forward with the real urgency that the funding shortfall represents?
Thank you, Commissioner. I think, okay, what we have been doing internally is recognize that we're operating on the assumption that we will get money when legislatures come back before October 1. There's got to be a new budget, and part of the governor's budget reflects new funding for our infrastructure. So we've been working internally on an augmented 5-year plan with the anticipation that this is going to happen, because we don't want to be in a situation where the legislatures and the governor reach an agreement on funding and we are not ready to deliver on the governor's promise. So that's how we've been proceeding. Probably since I would say February, March, we've been kind of on the mindset that we will get new money.
The graph that I referenced on page 42, did that anticipate the approval of the funding package? I'm going to have a hard time.
I think it's the trunk line, freeway, and non-freeway bridge condition chart.
Yeah, that's it.
Or actually, I'm sorry, if it's the historic trunk line pavement condition chart, that's page 41.
41.
And that is based on the revenues that we have in the document right now. That's not based on the governor's anticipated budget that she has proposed. So if we were to get additional funding, you would see that line increase. Where we are right now, we're doing really everything that we can to preserve the system. Even saying that, it will continue to decline if we don't receive additional revenue.
Okay.
So that's what we're trying to say. We're making the best investments that we can, but without additional funding, the system will continue to decline.
All right, so there's a little bit of a tension there for me between what, that I thought I heard you saying, Director, that we've anticipated the funding in the document, the 5-year plan, but this graph in particular on page 41 doesn't reflect that.
No, we have not incorporated the anticipation in our current 5-year plan, but we are working on an augmented 5-year plan when we do receive the money.
Okay.
So this document is prepared based on our current 5-year plan without any infusion of additional revenue. So this graph you see here is showing the downward trend of what our condition is going to look like if nothing happens. However, if when we do get the funding, the governor's plan is supposed to get us back heading towards the 90% goal again.
And then I guess the follow-up question to that would be, if this plan is a useful tool in driving both public and legislative opinions with respect to the governor's funding proposal, is there enough urgency written into this document?
I would say yes. That anybody, even to the not so trained eye, looking at this graph, it's pretty clear to me that the trend it's not sustainable. Something has to happen. Right now, this is showing about a 78%, and the public is saying 78% is not acceptable. If you take a look at this, I think in about a few years, we're going to be at 70%. It's just on a downward trend, and if 78% is not acceptable now, I can't imagine us getting to 70, 65%. It just something just has to happen. We've been sharing this with legislatures, so they're aware of where we're headed.
I'm comfortable with that, I think, but the urgency that's reflected in this graph is not contained in this your director's statement at the beginning. It says, and I have to jump back to it now, but it says what? Because funding levels aren't adequate to meet the current needs. I'm only wondering whether we ought to use this as this document as a kind of a call to arms, that this once again is an urgent situation. It's an intolerable situation. That's obvious when you get to page 41, but it comes to my mind, it comes through a little too softly at the beginning. I'd rather see something that is a bit more bold.
Should we, even though it's in a graphical form here in 41, should we also maybe state it at the beginning, saying our current pavement condition is at 70%? Some of that nature, that this is where we're headed in the next 5 years.
I think that would make it a stronger document if the purpose of the document is to help drive change.
Okay. Duly noted. We certainly could do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
And I think we could get into a long discussion on whether or not this is a political document for that purpose. I personally don't think it is. I wouldn't do that, but that's up to the department. I think this is a document that is the document that you've got delivered to the legislature in March, saying this is what we're going to spend, and start using it to leverage them to say it's not going to be to try to get them to move on funding. I don't know. But I don't think we want to spend the rest of the day on that. But I think this is an document of the reality of what you've got to deal with. I think it's a really good idea to have that augmented plan in place in case something changes, so that you can alter it in the process. But in the meantime, I think it's kind of the situation.
Well, we'll implement Commissioner Hartwell's recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Lana. Is there a motion to approve the 5-year plan?
I have a question yet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. If I would have been here 5 years ago and looked at the plan 5 years ago, would every project in that book have been completed? Do we track projects from year to year, ones that get pushed over, ones that get moved? How do we know or track the projects that are on our 5-year plan now that maybe didn't get done in 2025?
Yeah, that is a good question. The projects that land in this list are all based on the year of obligation. And that's how we select the projects that are getting included. and it only includes projects on the trunk line system, and it's from a select number of categories that we use to build the program. So it's not everything you see, everything that's going to be constructed out there on the roadway. It's major categories. So when projects are moving forward, sometimes schedules can slip. Sometimes projects are abandoned. So we don't necessarily do an update to previous plans to reflect any of those changes. We kind of pull the project list again. Anything that's usually things that were in there from last year, from like 2020, for instance, you should see it reflected again, unless there were some changes to project limits or year of construction or something like that. So it really should kind of roll forward, but we don't go back and update project lists for prior years for changes that might have happened. So if there's a specific project that's in a document from a past year and you never saw it constructed, I would just recommend reaching out and getting some more information from us internally, and we can do a more thorough search kind of on our programming side to see more details about that specific project. And we also have the interactive map out there too, where you can kind of go and see more details as well.
I just think it's very hard from our standpoint, well, you have a huge job, obviously, but it's very hard to track if we're actually doing what our 5-year plan says. We see little bits and pieces, but we don't see a checklist of, yes, this was done. Or
Yeah.
if we had these on here, and then we have, say you had 16, 17, 18, 19, and they were in a different color on here, that they were completed or still going. I don't know if that's an option.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like a look back, an accomplishments document more than what this is, which is really a forward-looking document. This is everything that we are planning to do in the future, and obviously it's going to be based on what we know right now, but there will be changes. So, perhaps we could look into doing some sort of accomplishments on the 5-year program document in order to kind of address what you're talking about. So you can really look back and see, yes.
Or just
these
going
projects were-
forward,
Yeah.
if next year we come back and the projects that well, it'd have to be 2021, the ones that are listed as 2020 were still there and they were highlighted as completed.
Yeah.
Or we could address why it's still going, or what's going on.
Okay, thank you. I will work to address that. I think that's a great suggestion. So we'll see what we can do about that, or perhaps next year.
Explore, we have a number of reporting mechanisms in place that look at what percentage of the priority was completed.
Right.
We have some other legislative required reports that say what were the contracts that were issued and the projects associated. We'll take a look at that and see if we can do something that's perhaps a little more transparent, that can put a picture together of what we accomplished and did we plan for.
Thank you.
Any other, yes, Commissioner Mosher.
As local agencies' priorities change, does that restrict them? Does this document restrict them in changing their priorities? Say a county road commission that does an annual review and reprioritizes projects. Does this restrict them?
No, this program is only focused on the MDOT system. Changes to projects on the local side would be incorporated into a local TIP, the Transportation Improvement Program, or STIP. So those changes would be in there.
I'd entertain a motion to approve the 5-year plan, put it into the process as outlined on this overhead up here.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and supported. Any additional discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Passed. Thank you very much, Lina,
thank you.
and others. Okay, if we could have the Michigan Mobility 2045, which we're going over our usual time allotment here, so if we could speed this one up, we'd appreciate it. This is the first step in this process. If you look at it, I mean, if we approve today, then it goes into a process, so it isn't like this is final, so.
Well, good morning. I am Brad Charlevoix. I serve as one of the supervisors in the Bureau of Transportation Planning and also as the project manager for the development of the state long-range plan. I also want to highlight in the room today, I have Kyle Haller, who's my deputy project manager on this effort, Todd Davis from WSP, who's the project manager from the consultant side, as well as Karen Fawcett, my boss. So we're all here today to discuss where we're at with the development of the long-range plan and where we're moving forward. So we came to you in April of 2018 basically announcing that we are kicking off the development of a new plan with a brand new contract. And so what our purpose here today really is to do is to explain what the work we've done to this date and then to present to you the proposed vision statement that came out of an extensive involvement of stakeholder and public engagement, and then to ask for your feedback on that and then for your adoption of that vision statement. So that's really what we're here today to discuss. So most of you probably already know what a state long-range plan is. It is a multimodal policy-based federally required planning document which establishes goals, objectives, a vision, and key strategies for the future of transportation as a whole in the state. Whereas we just talked about the 5-year program, focuses on 5 years of projects for the state trunk line and for the modes related to that. The long-range plan encompasses all infrastructure in Michigan, all modes of transportation. And we must have a 20-year planning horizon moving forward. This chart just kind of shows where the long-range plan is relative to the whole program development process. So the 5-year program that we just heard about is further down in the planning documents section, but prior to that is the development of the policies and the strategies that develop this long-range plan as a whole. And so we're really at the very starting edge of this process. So over the last year, we worked on phase 1 of this contract. This contract is developed into 2 phases. So we developed it this way, anticipating the changeover in the new administration and everything. So we spent the last year really doing a lot of background research on these topics here that I won't go into detail on. But I do want to highlight that one of the big things that we spent quite a bit of time on was extensive public and stakeholder engagement. And I'm going to share some of those findings with you here shortly. And where we're at this process is at the transition from phase 1 to phase 2, where we've got a draft vision in place to present to you today. And then if approved today, we will be able to move forward with the policy development and strategic direction to develop this plan. So just to highlight, one of the things that is innovative and new for the nation right now that we're the first state to try to do is to integrate 4 different statewide plans into one effort. So 3 federal agencies require 3 different statewide plans: a state long-range plan, a state freight plan, and a state rail plan. In addition, the American League for Bicyclists has recommendations for what they would recognize as a statewide active transportation plan and for non-motorized. And so what we're doing here with the cooperation of all our federal agencies is to integrate this all into one effort. It's going to be, that follows our views of efficiencies, trying to combine resources and do this all at once as opposed to do this 4 independent times where there's quite a bit of overlap. And so we've got many states looking at us right now to see how this works out, and they're looking at us as a role model moving forward. So this just shows the timeline in terms of where we've gone and where we're going forward. We spent January through April going over the extensive public involvement to get the priorities so we could craft a vision. We are now in the process of having that draft vision in place and then moving forward with establishing goals. In the fall, we will have a second round of public engagement where we will go out with goals and strategies to the public and our stakeholders to say, do these goals and objectives reflect what you told us back in first round of public involvement and reflect the vision? And then starting in late 2019 through the majority of 2020, we'll be actually writing the document itself and then coming back to you in the fall of 2020 with a draft plan in place to have your review and comment on. And then finally, we'd ask in January 2021 to come back with you for a final adoption of this plan. So what we've done over the last few months is go through visioning, where we've done quite a bit of extensive involvement, both internally with MDOT, with our leadership and staff, general public, key stakeholders, and partnering agencies. And really what this vision will be used for is to develop the goals, the strategies, and the objectives for an integrated multimodal performance-based plan. So when we first talked to the leadership team, these were the key ideas that they came up with, that they wanted to see our vision encompass. We wanted this vision to be more future-focused and not just a reflection on what's going on today, but where do we want to go. Safety was a critical component. We want to keep moving forward, as the director talked about, with Towards Zero Deaths, and we want to continue to emphasize safety. Ways to continually improve the economy of the state was a huge aspect as well. Incorporation of new technologies through connected and autonomous vehicles, automation, drones, and all the other types of movement that's coming at us. Education, not only of internally, but education of our general public and our stakeholders on all of these things coming at us, and then innovation. And so these were key things that the leadership team provided input on back in May. So over the course of our public and stakeholder engagement, we did go to over 30 locations across the state. And what we did differently this time is we tapped onto additional meetings that were already existing for other topics so that we could reach a wider audience. And we attended conferences, public events, and we targeted environmental justice populations, minority and low income. And we had just about 1,300 people attending these events that we saw at these meetings. And then also we had an online survey known as MetroQuest that we had, and we received 6,300 surveys filled out statewide as a result of that. And so a few other efforts that we did was an attitudes and perception survey, whereas the MetroQuest was open to anyone across the state to fill out. This was a statistically stratified survey based on the demographics of our state, and we received 1,500 surveys statewide as a result of that. Telephone town halls. Up here is kind of our war room of folks that we had in the room for 2 telephone town halls, where this was kind of like an online radio show almost, where basically folks had the option to call in on 2 different occasions to ask questions on where we're going with the future of transportation, and we had over 3,000 people participate in those 2-hour sessions. And then we also have a dedicated website out here, and we've been advertising through our social media. So this just shows from the MetroQuest survey the results of where people filled out the surveys across the state. So all of our urban areas were very well represented, as well as some of our smaller cities up in the northern part of the state. And so we did see a pretty good representation statewide, reflective of our proportions of our populations. These next few slides, which I also have as handouts in there, show you some of the results from the survey. So this question asked, if you had the choice in how you would allocate the budget, and it was kind of a coin game, so we had 50 points and stars that represent money, and you had the choice between where to invest that across 8 different categories here, how would they invest it? And not surprisingly, pavement repairs and bridges came up as the top 2 categories that people wanted to see investments. However, we did see significant investment, though, towards passenger rail, bicycle and pedestrians, safety, security, and bus service. What we saw towards the bottom was new highway lanes, and adding capacity was way at the bottom of the list relative to expansion of other modes and maintaining our current system. And then one of the areas that we're still working on is the education of self-driving technology. So right now, the general public is still being educated. So we have to, so that when comparing that with the current needs of needing to fix our roads, that did not show up very high on our survey at the time. Another thing we asked was priority ranking in terms of, we had 7 categories in terms of which of these would you rank in terms of importance. And so, again, transportation system maintenance came up as number 1. Quality of service, which is increasing the use of technologies and communication and enhancing public transit and other modes, came up second. quality of life, improving the environment, and public health and sustainability came up number 3, and then safety and security was very close at 4th. And then, as you see at the very bottom there, was transportation system expansion. The Attitudes and Perceptions Survey, which was independent of the MetroQuest survey, we also asked a question on priorities, and we found fairly similar responses from the statistically stratified survey here on the attitudes and perception. Maintaining our existing system came out number 1 in terms of where folks wanted to see as the highest priority. Reducing traffic congestion did come in number 2, but that does not mean adding lanes. As you see further down the list is adding lanes to increase capacity. They saw reducing traffic congestion as many different ways of addressing that through operations and other aspects. Expanding services for seniors and persons with disabilities and expanding public transportation and bicycle and pedestrian came up very high on that list as well, consistent with the MetroQuest survey. And then we also, since we are developing in this to meet the requirements for the state freight plan, we had a separate survey sent out through our commission for logistics and supply chain collaboration, and they established their priorities in terms of what performance areas do they want to see addressed more so in the freight plan side of this. And so asset management, mobile inclusion, the economy and workforce access all came out very high on that list as well. So where we came up to was we got all this feedback from the general public and our stakeholders through 3.5 months of extensive public involvement through a hybrid of options. It now came down to, now we want to take that and develop the vision statement. And so on June 11th, we had a workshop with 65 people in this room right here, as you can see. And we collectively together, through collaboration with MDOT staff and stakeholders from all different areas, came up with the draft vision statement. This just shows you the diversity of people in the room that were here, so it wasn't just MDOT planning folks here coming up with this. This were folks from all over the organization, as well as partnering agencies. And so, and the other handout that you'll see there is one of the things we've done is we've developed a extensive core team and stakeholder group that is involved in the development of this plan. And we've got representation all across the state from various specialty areas to ensure that this plan is going to be embraced. Because the big thing we want to make sure this plan does is it's going to address the needs of all users of the system, all modes of transportation, all owners. This is not just an MDOT long-range plan, it is a state of Michigan plan. So bringing these stakeholders in and getting them to buy into this process has been where we're going. This is the word cloud of the key words that were coming up when we were talking about the vision statement. People wanted it towards more user and people focused versus just system and infrastructure. We want to be involved, feedback, partnerships, technology, future focused, adaptable. All of these terms came up. And as a result of that, we came up with the draft vision statement that is here in front of you today. And so the vision statement is read as follows. In 2045, Michigan's mobility network is safe, efficient, future-driven, and adaptable. This interconnected multimodal system is people-focused, equitable, reliable, convenient for all users, and enriches Michigan's economic and societal vitality. Through collaboration and innovation, Michigan will deliver a well-maintained and sustainably funded network where strategic investments are made in mobility options that improve quality of life, support public health, and promote resilience. So this vision statement is a culmination of all of the effort that has been put together over the last year through extensive public and stakeholder engagement, as well as input and review from our MDOT leadership as well has been part of this process. And so where we're at here is we're here today to ask for your feedback on this vision statement and then hopefully for your adoption for this. And so I guess, do you have any questions for me today on this one?
Questions for Bradley? Just right off, I'd have just a quick question. what, in people's minds, what does the word resiliency mean? The rest of the words I can kind of define quickly, but resiliency?
Sure. Resiliency is a brand-new planning factor that was required through the FAST Act, Federal Reauthorization Bill. And what we're talking about with resiliency is we've had quite a bit of extreme weather out there with flooding and infrastructure that's being able to withhold the extreme weather that's going out there. So what we're looking at is developing, how do we develop a system to ensure that it is resilient to these severe weather occasions and other things like that. So really that's the concept behind it. It is a requirement that we address now through the federal law, but that's where that term came.
Okay, interesting. Other questions or comments? Looks like a huge amount of work has gone into this. It's terrific.
It does. And if it's appropriate, Mr. Chair, I would move approval of the draft vision statement.
Then moved, did we approve the vision statement draft as presented? Supported by Commissioner Mosier. Any additional discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. So we start the process and
Thank you
go to
very
the next phase. Thank you very much. And that gets us to the public comment portion of the agenda. Is there anyone from the general public that has a comment? Come before the commission. Okay. See any? I see noted here that the next meeting is scheduled in Royal Oak again. We were just there. Is there a reason why we're going to Royal Oak? Chairman's preference. Well, that tells me. Okay. If there's nothing else to come before the commission, we're adjourned.